Complete reliance on God. The province was going to fund us for 3 years, Father Andre said. The second year we were sent a check for $19,000. I was driving on the major Degen expressway, and in prayer came the challenge, give the check back. It was a challenge from God to depend completely on God for its survival, he said. And we never went into the red for all the years of its existence. Father Joe at first was not as sure as his friend. Andre had the idea that the retreat house could float on its own. I needed more faith at that time and asked for it in prayer, a grace I am sure I needed, he said. But as time went on, he realized that it was the right thing to do. With no funding, the little portion grew and spread its wings, as it were, to reach people not only in the Bronx, but also from other parts of the city and beyond. Though I secretly wondered how the ministry was going to continue, my fears turned to wonder when I saw how the people we served or knew, or even strangers, supplied money, services, their time, themselves. Of course, my faith was bolstered too, he said. Sister Ellie remembered that decision as well. I thought it was a bold thing to do. I thought it was wonderful. For Andre especially, it was an expression of a desire to really make this a place that depended on God and on the poor. And that was what the whole thing was about to me. As we started working together, that vision and dream that Andre had began to grow, she said. I don't think I ever had any doubt that it was going to work. People were generous in giving donations, and I think Andre and Joe both had the gift of begging, which I never had. I'm always grateful when someone gives me something, but I'm not good at asking for what I need. I was impressed by the fact that they could say, we need new windows. Let's see if we could ask for new windows, Sister Ellie said. The impulse was to say, this is not for us. This is for the poor, she continued. So that was a great gift for me to participate in that kind of trust in God and in a great sense of this is not for us. This is for the people. And this is a wonderful thing to be doing. Wouldn't you love to have a part in it? The decision to do without the funding echoed St. Francis, who renounced his father's inheritance and any ties to his family in order to serve God and the poor. Although the team did not renounce the province, it was refusing their generous offer of support in order to rely solely on God to take care of their needs. In a letter to the province dated October 4th, 1984, the team stated in part, recently, we met as a staff and looked over our needs and goals, the journey we have traveled up to this month, and came up with a decision that seems to be in line with our preaching of the gospel free. We decided to return to you the generous allotment of money you made available in the second provincial grant to the little portion. By returning the money, we do not want to exclude you from our ministry. In point of fact, we look upon our decision as a divestiture in the spirit of Francis. And we feel we will be living more in harmony with the poor, while we are aware we are making a leap in faith. By relying on the providence of God, the little portion will always remain Franciscan. The decision to go without financial help was a big step for the team and also for the volunteers. Although a huge leap of faith, they felt it was more in keeping with the ministry. But everything up until that point supported this next step. Faith had gotten them this far. Surely it would take them further. Any concerns that Father Andre felt during that time would stem from a lack of faith in God's providence, he said. Every time we took control of the little portion, it began to limp. As soon as we turned it completely over to God, God took it beyond our dreams. The volunteers supported the idea of relying solely on God's providence. How could they serve the poor without living that experience? This was in keeping with a section of the secular Franciscan rule. A sense of community will make them joyful and ready to place themselves on an equal basis with all people, especially with the lowly, for whom they shall strive to create conditions of life worthy of people redeemed by Christ. Article 13. By returning the money to the province, the staff and volunteers were facing an uncertain future. It was their way of placing themselves on an equal basis with all people. They put all their faith in God, who had not yet disappointed them. God would not let them fail. This was their dream, their vision. As it turned out, God, through outside supporters, never let them down. For example, water came pouring through the roof during a heavy rainfall the first spring the house was open. It desperately needed to be replaced, and a friend of the team said he could do the work for $1,000, which the team did not have. The team celebrated Eucharist at the Franciscan Mission Associates a few days later and spoke of the most pressing needs at the house. They came home with a car full of groceries. As they were putting the groceries away, they were praying, "God, we need a new roof, not groceries." Grateful as they were for the generous food donation, the roof problem weighed heavily on them. As Sister Ellie finished emptying the last of the grocery bags, she opened a thank you note, which included a check for $1,000. The team's prayers had been answered. After the first retreat, the washing machine broke down. The sheets and towels were bundled off and taken home by the volunteers, but the house needed a new washer and dryer. The team held an open house the following weekend, and those who visited left donations that totaled more than $700, enough to get the house what it needed. Donations also came in from the most unexpected places. Our used refrigerator had a hole in one side, and the joke was that it kept our food luke cold, said Father Andre. At that same time, Father Michael Sepp had been newly ordained. He visited the day after his first Mass to leave a donation that was sufficient to purchase a new refrigerator. And in July of the second year, a begging letter for new windows went out to all the supporters on the mailing list. The response was tremendous, nearly $14,000. I recall the time the retreat team decided to replace the drafty windows. Checks appeared from relatives in France. The new windows were paid for by the people of the portion, said Father Cho. Andre was conducting a study pilgrimage in Assisi that year, and I wrote to him saying, "I fall on my knees in thanksgiving for all the monetary aid we received to replace the windows." The checks came pouring in, and the new windows were installed and paid for by early November. The newsletter was a valuable tool for keeping the dream alive, and it proved to be a success. It was a link from the South Bronx to supporters all over the world. As the years went on, the mailing list grew so much that the team had to send the newsletter out to a professional rather than produce it on the small copier that had been donated to the retreat house. Each day, each week, each month brought signs that the ministry was on the right path. The more the team and volunteers relied on God, the more God provided. And everything that was provided was given back to those who visited the house.